sure how many, are we at our fourth of these, I think? Third, we're at third of these. It is so wonderful to see you all here and see some familiar faces from previous Thursday nights and some new faces, which is great. Obviously new faces up here at our candidate table. Candidates, thank you for joining us tonight. Thank you for running. Thank you for just the time and the effort that you put in. To run is a great service to our community, and I realize that 3 in, I've entirely forgotten my order of things. I should probably introduce myself. My name is Rachel Crocker, and I am the director here at the Albany County Public Library. And it is just always our privilege every 2 years to work with the League of Women Voters to put on this event, or this series of events, and be able to help right? Libraries are about information, and we are about connecting our community to information, and what better way in election season than helping to host these candidate forums. So thank you all for being here. I think I've said that now like 3 times, but I'm really thankful. I'm really thankful that you're here. Just a couple small housekeeping things. We are recording this. So we are both live streaming and recording so that voters that couldn't join us tonight are able to access this information later. For candidates, if you'll just make sure that you are nearish a mic so that it is picking you up. We will manage the overall sound in the room so we're not blowing people out of the room, but we want to make sure that we're getting you on the mic so that people in virtual land can hear you. And that is my small piece of housekeeping. So we're in store for a really great night, and I'm going to hand it over to Lynn from the League of Women Voters to do some additional introductions.
So this is always a struggle with me. All right, let's hope. Well, the first forum I stood here and I looked like a little thumb sticking up. So, what?
Go back a little bit, you're too close.
I'm too close. Oh, that never happens. How's that? You're great. Good? Okay. All right. So, welcome also. And my thanks to the Albany County Library. Word has it that if you come back in the fall for the general election forums, we'll be in a new space.
Not this year.
Not this year? No, we'll be in a new space because this space is being redone. That's right. Anyway, so 2 years from now, this will be just so glamorous. Anyway, Shane is our tech person. It's Sims, right? Shane, Sims? Yeah. Okay. And if it's a beauty to behold, the quality of the recordings. I hope you go out and look at yourself and then look at some of the other people. Who's laughing? All right, well, let's not forget the candidates who are with us in the audience. Anybody who's running for an office or is occupying an elected office, could you please come forward to introduce yourself? Now, you can't stay seated because the audience at home can't see you there. So, come on, Brandon.
So don't forget about Norbert. He's trying to hide.
Hello, everyone. My name is Sue Ibera, and I'm a county commissioner.
Good evening, Brandon Newman, current Ward 2 council member for 2 more years.
I was trying to hide back there. I'm just used to sitting in the back corner. Norbert Kriebel, I'm running for City Council Ward 1.
Okay, so that's a preview of Ward 1. Ward 1 and Ward 3 are next week. Let's see, timekeepers. We have 2 timekeepers today. Jamie Egoff is holding up a sign. And just as a warning, when it says 60 seconds, that means you have 60 seconds left. And we're counting down from 60. You have 90 minutes. 90 seconds for most of the questions, unless otherwise you're told otherwise. And there's a big bright red stop sign right there. Okay. And we don't have any whistles or bells or anything. We won't hurt you if you run over a little. let's see. And our other timekeeper is a replacement. Matthew Link is helping Jamie tonight. My partner, Al Tremblay, is usually here, but he had triple bypass surgery this week, so he's not going to be with us, but he can watch later. Anyway, let's see, what else? Oh, I wanted to also say that officially now at the national level, the ALA, the American Library Association, and the National League of Women Voters have partnered on all things voting related. So I don't think we feel it much here. I didn't get a personal notice, and neither did Rachel. But there's a lot of press at the national level, and it's as it should be. Let's see. Could you hand me your paper, please, that has your bio?
Oh, I don't know where that is.
I should know I wrote this. Anyway, I've probably forgotten something, but let's just go ahead. Our moderator for tonight is Peter Parolin. I started doing bios halfway through the cycle last time because people never knew who the moderator was. So it's hard work being a moderator. It's harder being a candidate, I know. But, so this is Peter Parolin. Peter is the Dean of the College of Honors, and he's been a department head of English. He was born in Canada. He earned his BA from the University of British Columbia and his MA and PhD from the University of Pennsylvania. In 2023, Peter became a U.S. citizen. In a ceremony held in East High School Gymnasium over in Cheyenne. And Peter's reaction, I'm not surprised here, to quote him, "It's emotional to become an American citizen. I see America as the place where education opens all kinds of doors and opportunities, and that's why it's so meaningful to have these students, i.e. the East High School students, here and the teachers who support you." Very nice, don't you think? You're going to tell them. Oh, and this will be the first year that Peter gets to vote. He's looking forward to it. Okay, well, no, there's another paragraph, Peter. Okay, so Peter is passionate about the stage and frequently participates in community and university productions. He is also the author of a book titled Women Players in England, 1500 to 1660, Beyond the All-Male Stage, and he has numerous articles on Shakespeare and performance history. Peter has many teaching awards, and of special note, at least this is my special note, he has won the top teacher award at UW's school, or Department of Arts, School of Arts and Sciences 7 times. 7 times, folks. Nobody does that. Does anybody else do that? No one does.
Thank you, Lynn.
Here's your first question.
That's great. Gosh, I almost want to vote for myself now, but I'm not running for anything. So thank you very much, Lynn, and welcome everybody. I am so excited about politics this year. I think I'm one of the few Americans that's really excited about politics, but I do feel that way because this year I get to be not just an observer, but a participant in the great American experiment. And thank you all, fellow citizens, for being here, because one of the things that I had reinforced for me when I was studying for the citizenship exam, and it's geeky, but it's true, is that the democracy is about all of us coming together. And of course, it's the candidates on the front line who put themselves out there to serve us, but it's also about us coming together too in forums like this all over the country to decide who do we want to be, how do we want to run our communities at the national, state, and local levels, and we have the power. And however jaded we might get, we have to remember that we have the power, and tonight's part of that. So feeling powerful, let's get started. So candidates, thank you for putting yourselves forward. It's great to see you all here. I would like to invite each of you to take 1 minute. Normally you have 90 seconds, but how about 1 minute to just introduce yourself, your relation to Laramie, and anything we need to know about you to get started. And then we can dive much deeper through our question and answer period into your thoughts about the issues that matter to Laramie and city councilors. So maybe starting with Melanie, would you take a moment to introduce yourself?
Absolutely. Thank you, Peter. Thank you, everyone who's here tonight and everyone joining online. My name is Melanie Vigil, and I'm an assistant dean of students at the University of Wyoming. I've lived in Laramie for the past almost 15 years, and I'm really, really passionate about this community. My family is from Laramie. We've spent many generations here, and a couple of things that I'm really, really passionate about is affordable and safe housing, water conservation in general, and then, wow, 30 seconds goes really quick. And then growing our local economy sustainably so that our young people can stay and thrive here in this community.
Hi, everybody. My name is Jayne Pearce, and I'm a current city council member and have been on council for probably more years than some folks would prefer. And I work for UW and have worked for UW for over 20 years now. So that's the day job in the online and continuing education division. And I do a lot of data analysis to make sure that we're bringing in the right programs and our programs are successful for undergrads and grads. So, okay.
Awesome. Hi, my name is Brett Kahler. I currently work as the Executive Director of the Wyoming Economic Development Association. I've been a Laramie resident for a total of just over 10 years, a product of the University of Wyoming. I am running mostly because I believe civic engagement is a really exciting and awesome opportunity, and I want to be part of that mix. Since I've been a full-time resident in Laramie, I've worked with and served on the Laramie Parks, Tree, and Recreation Advisory Board, also on the Laramie Plains Civic Center Board of Directors. But my passions really lie in creating strong relationships between the three governance boards, the City Council, County Commissioners, and the University of Wyoming, as well as strong economic development opportunities for this community that will make it so people want to come here and live here and stay here. So thanks for being here tonight.
Yeah, we got a couple. Hi, everyone. My name is Jim Freed. I've been in Laramie for about 14 years. I love this community. I came here to the University of Wyoming to study environment and natural resources and ended up sticking around. So I really fell in love with the people, the location, and everything that Laramie has to offer. I currently work with the National Forest Foundation as the Medicine Bow Route Program Coordinator. So I'm really focused on recreation infrastructure in my job, which interfaces with a lot of folks that live in our community, that come to our community. And I want to take that into my previous experience here, which was national service. And so I started out in the Wyoming Conservation Corps in 2012, and then was the program director for a few years before I took this current job. And that was just working with young adults, getting folks outside, accomplishing tasks, and figuring out what the needs of the community were that we were working in, and then getting those things done. So really happy to be here. Thank you for your time.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Brett Glass, and I am an electrical engineer and a physicist, and the owner of 2 Laramie businesses, including the world's first wireless ISP, which was a first for Wyoming and the first for Laramie. I'm also an author. I'm a singer and songwriter as well in my spare time. I'm an extra-class ham radio operator. I'm a lover of good coffee and chocolate, and an advocate of ethical, transparent, fair, efficient, and responsive government. I co-founded Laramie Film Society. I've served on the Zoning Board of Adjustment and also on the Traffic Safety Commission and on the Wyoming Telecom Council. As a business person engineer, I have a head for numbers, an intuitive sense for when they don't add up, which is important when you're reviewing the city budget. I've lived in Laramie continuously for 32 years. And after all this time, I think I have a pretty good understanding of its history, economy, and character. I love Laramie, and the reason why I'm running is that I want to give back after all of these wonderful years here. There's more biographical information on my website, which is voteglass.org, if you're interested in hearing more. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, let me ask a quick question about your engagement with City Council. Do you currently pay attention to City Council meetings on a regular basis? That's particularly maybe funny regarding Jayne, but I think who's on City Council. But to all of you, what do you think is the current state of City Council, and what could you bring that's not there, or what needs to happen to make it a more efficient body? And we'll start with Melanie, and then I'll do a different first person for each question.
Yeah, that's a great question. So I don't attend City Council weekly. My day job has been pretty busy as of late. But one of the things that I love about City Council is that you really have to pay attention to the granular level. You know, we as a community, our everyday lives are affected by what City Council passes or doesn't pass, and so that's kind of why I'm running. Also, I think that I'm very, very interested in getting to the granular level in detail. And can you repeat the second part of that question?
It was just, what do you think of how City Council currently functions, and what
Yeah.
could you bring that might not already be there, if you have thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think for me right now, one of the things that I do best is I really serve as a voice for young people. I'm really passionate about advocating for young people, and Laramie is currently kind of a transient town. We know Laramie as a transient town. And I really want young people to stay here, to build their lives here, just as I've done. And so that's something that I've been really passionate about, and I want to get more young people involved, not only in our statewide government, but especially our local government.
So what was the question? So as you know, I serve on City Council right now, so I am there at least 4 Tuesdays a month, and as a council person, we get to pick the committees that we serve on. So there is always behind the scenes committee work that we're all involved with. So yeah, so it's not, it's time consuming, and the packets for review are pretty lengthy, and we have to stay pretty current on what's happening at the state level as well as the county level. So there's a bit involved in serving.
As far as paying attention to what City Council does, I can't say I do on a weekly basis, but I'm pretty in tune via news sources and others, as well as the live stream, which is an awesome thing that Laramie City Council does when you can tune in on an issue that I think is of importance to especially my work, but also the community I live in. The interesting thing is my impetus for running for City Council isn't from a place of feeling like this town is a mess or needs somebody to come in and save it. I actually think the City Council does a pretty good job at what they do, but I think that there's potential to enhance that work. One of the things that I'm really, really excited about is engaging the residents of Ward 2 well before decisions are made or being discussed at a time where you get just a short period of time in front of the council to voice your opinions. And I know that's a lot easier said and a lot harder done, but I think that there's a real potential for myself if I were a member of the City Council to engage with the residents that way, and then the council as well as a whole, and how do we do that better across the whole City Council and with city management. So those are the pieces that I'm really interested in hopefully bringing to the table, but overall fairly pleased with the current makeup of what the City Council is.
Over the years I've been to City Council meetings, been awarded National Days of Service, and gotten to interact with different members of City Council over the years, and just crossing paths in Laramie. I think the City Council has been really effective on certain issues as of recent, and I think they've done a great job in building on relationships. And one of the things I like to think of is the Laramie Police Advisory Board that was recently enacted. What the City Council has done to try to work with the airport and keep the airport here, provide transparency in a lot of issues like that, I think is really hard, and they've done a great job. What I would bring to City Council, I think, is a positive attitude. Anyone who knows me knows that I have this positive outlook. I love engaging with people. I think one of the skills is communicating, listening to the needs of the community that you're serving, and acting upon that. And so what I hope to do in City Council is really get to know the constituents in Ward 2 and understand the needs. I think I have a good understanding of what issues are being brought up, what have been brought up, looking at past City Council decisions and ordinances. But that changes. People change. People come and they move. I was a renter, now I'm a homeowner. That's brought different questions into my mind. It's caused me to have different changes of what needs to happen at a city level, and I will take that with me if I'm elected to City Council.
Thank you. Well, as a business person who, again, owns two businesses, and they're downtown businesses, I have to read the city council agendas every week for the work sessions and for the meetings, so I try to stay on top of what city council does. That's one of the reasons why I'm running. You see, city council, we have the form of government that we have, many of you are probably familiar with it, is called a council and city manager form of government. That means that the city manager is the CEO of the city and runs it from day to day, and the city council is sort of a board of directors. They're the bosses, and they have to supervise everything that goes on at the city. Now, ideally, they will do that. They'll read the packets very carefully, and they'll ask questions, and they'll do research. But too often, city council has just been rubber stamping what the bureaucracy brings to them, and sometimes just not listening to the public. Recently, there was a controversy over a city parking lot that the city council was looking at giving up the lease on, and 35 people came and spoke at the initial meeting. 15 more people came and spoke at a different meeting. They got more than 400 emails, and yet two of the incumbents, the two incumbents in our ward, who are on council now, voted against the public interest, and I'm very concerned about that. We don't want to have our council members have their minds made up in advance. We want them to listen. We don't want them to burn out. We don't want them to tune out. That's their job, and that's what I'm going to do if I'm on council.
Great. For this next question, I'm going to start asking some of the really good questions you all have been submitting. And if you don't know, there are pens and papers all around the room. So feel free to submit a question to one of our great League of Women Voters friends here, and they'll move them on up to me. It feels like there's a nexus of questions on housing in one way, shape, or form. So starting with you, Jayne, I'm going to ask a couple of them, but the first one will be just a question on where you see in Laramie the issue of affordable housing standing, and specifically, does the city have plans, or should there be plans, for encouraging more affordable housing close to downtown, and how could it be done?
No, it's
Oh,
me.
Jayne starts.
I'm just getting my notes
She's pulling
out.
out.
Yeah.
So, first of all, I think we use a lot of different words or have different definitions for what actually affordable means. So I think first we have to take a look at that, because if I'm having a conversation with somebody, they may view affordable as low income. And then the next person may view affordable as workforce. So I think there's not a real solid definition of what affordable actually means. And that's not to say that's a bad thing. That's just to say that there are many definitions out there right now. The other thing that people sometimes forget is council and our planning department has been working really, really hard on working with our developers in town and really taking a hard look at our zoning practices and lot size and stuff like that. So we have to give them a lot of credit, because we've made movement, and there is some excitement about the things we've already done, and we've seen, more developers in town. In terms of downtown, and I'm gonna jump to that because I think it was pretty apparent that I got called out for how I voted on that particular lot downtown. And first of all, people need to understand that it was a lease, and it was a 50-year lease. Now, frankly, who in their right mind leases something for 50 years? I think the whole agreement needed to be reviewed, right? And that, in fact, was what my vote was all about, was we need to have a discussion. I think we also need to know—
Jayne,
sorry.
Time's up, so you can come back to that one if you wish in your next answer, and then we'll pass to Brett.
Sure, sorry.
Thanks.
Thanks. I just want to echo what Jayne said. I think is really on the nose. That affordable is one word, but I look at it more in the light of accessible housing, because affordability means something different to a lot of people. But I think that there's a real opportunity for reviewing proposals for accessible housing in really any part of Laramie, but especially in downtown. There's a lot of research that shows that downtowns benefit from high-density housing, and maybe not in the shape or form that was, of course, the controversial housing development project potential of downtown. But I think just the thought of it should not be off the table. I think it's something that's incredibly important, and I think I'll probably say this a lot tonight as well. But I'm a big proponent of public-private partnerships and how the city council can work with city administration, city manager, and so on, with the private sector to create opportunities for that accessible housing. And I would say, a lot of times economic development can take a lot of time to see the end goal, but it's really important to just take a first step. So if parking's the issue, then parking should be addressed. But housing is also an issue, and housing should be addressed. And I think not doing anything to address, the housing situation that we as a city find ourselves in is just a real mistake. So it would be foremost in the front of my mind as a city council member.
Yeah, I think affordable housing, that's an issue that's been around a long time, especially in this community, most communities. I think there's a few different ways to look at it. The more dense that we can, make parts of Laramie, I think the more funding that allows us to have public transit, to use federal dollars differently. And so I think certainly understanding what the needs of the community are with the growth that's projected, by 2030, I think 4,000 folks or so is one projection I saw, and those people are going to need houses. If we want young people to stop moving out of Laramie, we need to be able to provide housing. And so I think there's two things we can do. One is looking at where we can put dense housing or different than single family homes. If Laramie doesn't have a community that can expand and have single family homes, or the market doesn't dictate that that's what's needed, then I think we need to look at what's realistic and how can we affect the most people and put them in housing solutions that are safe, that have all the safeties that are guaranteed to renters and to anyone else. I think that's what we need to look at. And so I think that really comes from looking at the population that's going to happen in Laramie, how we can grow, coming up with a plan, working with the city to ensure that we can grow sustainably, and that growth is also equitable. And I guess the last thing I will say is by listening to the constituents and understanding where we can grow housing developments and working with different economic drivers, I think that will give us a plan in city council to really enact those things.
Thank you. Boy, I could talk all evening on this, but let's just cover the basics here. Why do people feel there's a lack of affordable housing in Laramie? Well, our current city council seems to mean well, but it doesn't seem to understand the root causes of the current shortages of various kinds of affordable housing, and this has led them to make decisions that have actually made the problems worse for homeowners and for renters. Now, one of the problems we have all over the country, but also in Laramie, is that baby boom seniors are not downsizing. So we don't have those homes on the market. We need to provide them with incentives to downsize and suitable housing to move to, and we haven't done that. Now, as a builder and a renovator, I can tell you that the cost of inputs to new housing has tripled or even quadrupled. A simple exterior door that used to cost about $150 now costs more than $600. Labor now costs more as well due to inflation. The council has added to this cost by imposing unnecessary barriers such as extremely strict contractor licensing requirements and a uniform development code that ties developers up in very expensive red tape. Now, on rentals, council has imposed unnecessary regulations that have driven up the cost of rentals. They've caused many perfectly safe and attractive rentals to be withdrawn from the market or sold to private equity firms, which in turn have hiked the rents. Council has also touted densification and accessory dwelling units as solutions, but they're not for Laramie. And, well, I have some ideas about how to fix this. One of the things that we have that other cities don't is a large stock of existing housing which can be refurbished and renovated, and I think we should encourage that. Oh, I say I'm out of time. Okay, I'll continue this more in response to future questions.
Great, Melanie.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of the folks who've kind of spoken to what affordable housing means, and I think it means, again, a lot of different things to a lot of different people. For me, affordable housing means that you can pay your rent on the first of the month and you are not completely broke after that. It means you can pay your other bills. It means you still have money to go spend at our local businesses downtown, to go out to eat on a Friday night, those kinds of things. Maybe even a savings account. What is that? And so that's what affordable housing kind of means to me. In terms of downtown housing, I think, yeah, that's been such a hot topic with our city council, and especially on Facebook. If anyone is on our Laramie Classifieds page, that blew up for about 2 weeks. And so what I would want to do is really, really, have some, whether it be coffee hours, some community chat times, some office hours, et cetera, to really explore what housing downtown would mean for folks. I would want to get my constituents, talking to me and getting involved in our local city council process. That's something that's really interesting to me, and I think to a lot of young people here in our town as well. So those are a couple of ideas I have. That's what affordable housing means to me. But I also have some more thoughts on that, and I think that especially with housing, we have a lot to talk about here in Laramie.
We'll do another housing question. Brett, you'll be the first one on this one. There's three, I've gotten multiple questions on this, so I'm going to try to, and there's some overlap between them. It's about renters and landlords. So over half of Laramie residents rent their homes. If elected, will you resist efforts to repeal or weaken Laramie's rental safety ordinance? That is, weaken from the renter's point of view. And another question is, what do you see as the pros and cons of the new landlord-renter ordinance? So there's large implications to these questions.
And just to clarify, you said weaken from the renter's point
From
of
the
view.
renter's point of view, yeah.
Yeah, I'm really glad this question came up because it's something that I think is critical, and I hope there's a follow-up question, and if not, maybe I'll address briefly some of it now. But there's obviously an effort to ask the state legislature to review some of these types of policies, which I think is an incredibly bad road to go down. I think Laramie residents know what's best for Laramie residents and can work well with the city council to hopefully accomplish that. I think that the ordinance that's in place, I think, comes from a really good place, and I think it's done some really good things. But as anything in the world works, as time moves, there's probably some potential to strengthen that ordinance, and I think there's probably some potential to strengthen it for both parties, because I think that there may be some unintended consequences coming from that ordinance. I am certainly the cost of paying for certain things being passed on to the renter is not a consequence that I think anyone's really proud of. But in some of the work that I do in my day job is worked with the state legislature to pass a law that allows for reciprocal licensing of contractors between communities and counties, which I think is very beneficial for a place like Laramie. But no, I wouldn't be a proponent of getting rid of that ordinance. I'd be a proponent of getting feedback from the community and understanding how we can make it as strong as possible to allow renters to be in a place that is a place that they can afford and have savings to potentially maybe one day, if they have the interest, become a homeowner of for themselves and not be hamstrung by just high costs of rent being passed on from that ordinance. Yeah, I know this is a topic of discussion for quite a few people. As a renter for a lot of years in this town, it's not asking a lot, I think, to make sure that renters have a safe place to live, have roofs over their heads, exterior locking doors, egress windows in the basement, some of these things that this ordinance enacted and ensures happens. I don't think the state legislature should be repealing any of that. Like Brett said, I think if anything we should strengthen it. That is the majority of our community, are renters, and how do we keep those folks in our communities to continue renting or stay here and not go somewhere else? And really, I think some of the things, the issue with renting is if you have disputes, currently you have to go to the state level, you have to sue. That's what it requires, and that's a challenging thing for young people, for people that aren't as educated, don't have the time, if they're working multiple jobs, to do that. So it really,
excludes these people from being able to do that. And what the current ordinance does is it solves the issues at the lowest level. I think that's something I strongly believe in. Why make this a state issue if the city can enact ordinances and enforcement to allow safe things for houses and for renters? And the last thing I'll say is that whatever landlords need to do to update their property, those can be tax write-offs. So if someone who's a landlord is going to say, this is going to cost a lot of money and that burdens on me, a lot of these improvements are tax write-offs, and that benefits our community and that benefits the renters and ultimately doesn't cost the landowner.
Another topic that could consume an entire evening. Anyway, some people see more government as a solution to every problem, but this is definitely a case where it isn't. I am both a tenant and a landlord, and I see this issue from all sides, and so I'd like to think that I'm the most qualified person to address it. The city's current ordinance is well-meaning, but it is not helping tenants. It's drained more than $150,000 in fees from their wallets, and only half of the rentals in town are registered. And the city has received only 21 complaints. Most of them are not about problems with the rentals, actually, but about the landlord not filling out the bureaucratic paperwork. Rental owners who are now being faced with another layer of government regulation are withdrawing their properties from the market, and in some cases selling them to out-of-state private equity firms which are jacking up rents. And this is especially true of mobile home parks, but it's also true of apartments. Unlike local landlords, these big firms love the regulation because it restricts the market and it lets them raise rents. What's more, the city is unable legally to assist tenants with the most common complaints about rentals, including contract issues such as deductions from the security deposit and also evictions. The city doesn't even have the right kind of court to hear those cases. That requires a civil court, and the city court is only a criminal court. And on top of all of this, rental owners can't get their properties repaired or maintained due to the recently imposed contractor licensing regime, and also due to some of the requirements in the rental ordinance. They prevent you from fixing things yourself. You've got to call in a licensed contractor, and you can't always get one. Okay, I'll continue later.
When the city council passed the rental ordinance, it really made me proud to be from Laramie. I think it was a huge step in the right direction to provide some protections for renters, some much needed protections. So I just want to thank Jayne and her colleagues for doing some of that hard work. Because I think some of those things are tough, and you really have to kind of get into the weeds of what some of these things look like. I think that it's not much to ask for to live in a safe place, right? So to be able to have a smoke detector, carbon monoxide detector, all of those things, that is not much to ask and should just be a given. Unfortunately, sometimes those things are not a given. And so I think what this ordinance does is really, provide those really much needed protections for renters. And so I'd be in favor of even kind of strengthening that ordinance as needed. And it's not a whole lot to ask. I think it's $20 per unit to get registered with the city. That's not huge at all. And I kind of want to get away from some of the rhetoric that this is about bureaucracy and all these things. It is so easy to register with the city, and I don't think it's a lot to ask. Thanks.
Jayne, you get this one as well.
So I just want to say how happy I am to sit here with 4 people who are actually supportive of this ordinance. So thank you for that. So and that's all I'm going to say, because it wasn't easy, and yes, there's work to do. And if anybody understands how policy works, this was just a baby step. This was about carbon monoxide, detectors and things like that. There is much more work to do. And you're right, the state's, obviously, it's sitting in 2 committees right now, corporations, and I'm forgetting the other committee. They're hearing the topic on the 17th, and corporations is hearing it on maybe the 30th of this month. So yeah, those of us who are invested in this will be very busy, hopping in our car to go to Evanston to give public comment, or up to Casper, or potentially attending online, depending on what our schedules can fit in. So that's it.
Okay. Okay, great. We're changing timekeepers. The next question, Jim, you'll get the first crack at it. This one's a West Laramie question. Many citizens question the dirt roads in West Laramie. What do you think needs to happen to them? Should they be paved? And if so, how would you pay for it?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I've heard this a lot from different folks in Laramie. And I think this issue goes back decades. So this isn't anything new. I think if you've talked from folks in West Laramie, this has been a point of contention and maybe not unanimity, I think is the word. You know, I don't want to put the cart before the horse, but I know a little bit in Laramie that if we're going to pave a road, we need to replace the water main, or that should be a consideration. I think the water mains in West Laramie need to be addressed, and so it's kind of like a two-part thing. If you're going to tear up the road and put down asphalt or concrete, you're going to repair the water main. So I think that needs to be, it's not just putting a road down. There's other considerations that need to go into place. The other issue is property taxes. So if you pave a road, it's going to increase your property taxes. And so I don't know if I've seen a poll or talked with enough folks to understand if they're willing to have their property values go up and have an increased property tax in West Laramie. And if that's the case, if that's what the voters want and the constituents are okay with, then I think we should really try to figure out how to use our funding to adequately address that. But I know there's been different legislators have tried to solve that issue in the past, and I think it's hard because you need to find these funds and need to make sure that we're all on the same page and understanding what the whole issue is. Thanks.
Yes, paving West Laramie, a perennial topic. Brian Schuster, actually, who's running in Ward 1, is an expert on this. He and a number of other members of council a few years ago did manage to do something very positive. They got the first blocks off of Snowy Range Road paved several years ago, and that was a wonderful thing. They managed to get state funding for that, and that was fantastic. I think we need to continue that. There are going to be a few curmudgeons who are going to complain about the fact that, oh, I might pay a little more in taxes because, well, my street's a little nicer. But I don't think that I don't think that's the majority of people out there. We've also done something, by the way, to get rid of Limford Lake, which is a wonderful thing. In any case, how can we finance it? Well, revenue bonds are one way, and that's something we have the power to do under state law. Tax increment financing is another way, and that's also something which we can do. That may be something for our new urban renewal agency to look at. And the other thing is the 6-penny tax. Those are the three resources we have available to us right now. We should also seek other grants and other funding to see what else might be possible.
Yeah, so I've lived in Laramie for almost 15 years now. My entire family is pretty much from West Laramie. I live in West Laramie right now as a renter. And so this comes up every few years. It's a little dusty over there, but it doesn't really bother us too much. I think, as Jim mentioned, property taxes will go up if those roads are paved. We'll have to either build or adjust some water mains, and that's kind of something that I'd be willing to help facilitate conversation within West Laramie. I think right now, if you'd ask any of my aunts or my uncles if they wanted the roads paved, it kind of is what it is. This is not really, honestly, my main campaign issue. Because we just kind of live with it. I think, if anything, I'd like to kind of bolster some city services to be able to plow snow over in West Laramie. I think that might be my answer to this question. But yeah, that's kind of where I stand, and I'd certainly be happy to facilitate some more dialogue with the West Side.
So I agree. I think we can certainly have conversations in the future, but that doesn't mean we haven't had conversations in the past. And we've had many over the years. So the first thing I want to talk about is the history of why those streets ended up not being paved in the first place. Years ago, I think it was probably in the 60s, that there was contamination. So the state mandated the city of Laramie and those folks in West Laramie to be annexed to the city. And then the state gave the city money to put in clean water, water pipes and sewer. So that's all the state refunded the city to do, and that's basically where it's been and why it is in the situation that it is today. So, and the other thing is you have to remember that everybody who has a paved street in front of their house has at some point, the previous owner or the owner before basically paid for that street because the developer paid for that street. So over the years of these discussions with the members of West Laramie, you know, the city has offered, okay, if you sell your house, you know, we'll go in there and we'll pave it, and we'll put a lien on the house, and if you sell your house, you know, we'll get paid back. The city will get paid back, you know, at that time of sale. So it's no money out of pocket at that time, right? And there have been many solutions discussed. I'll just stop. But this is not an issue that can just get answered at one, you know, in a minute and a half or whatever we have.
You did well.
Thanks.
A minute and a half. I would, you know, it's fun going last on this because I think I really echo a lot of the sentiments that have been mentioned. I think funding's a critical component to discuss. Really glad to know, and I am aware that the City Council has talked about this for some time. One of the big things I think in the city of Laramie that just across the board since forever, or at least as long as I've been around, have been just road quality. You know, my fiance drives a Prius, and you can imagine that the bottom of her Prius isn't exactly in new shape right now. But I think it really comes down to the residents of West Laramie. To me, that's the biggest thing is that a need and a want for those residents. And if that's the case, and if that's something that the people that we would represent in Ward 2, I would represent in Ward 2 want, I think it's something that is worthwhile discussing and figuring out a solution. Obviously, you know, there are a lot of needs in our community, and we're, you know, working to do more with less year after year. But I think it would be the critical threshold would be whether or not the residents of West Laramie find it to be important. And I can't say to date I've heard a lot of that, but certainly, you know, from one or two folks that it's an area of interest.
Okay, thank you, candidates. And now this question will be Brett at the far end of the table will be the first respondent. And a couple questions here about City Council, city's relationships. Here is one specifically on the state of the relationship as you see it between the city and the county. How do you see that relationship, and how would you work with the county commissioners to enact beneficial policies for both city and county residents? How can we cooperate better?
Okay, well, the good news is that we are doing a lot better on that score lately. We reached an agreement with regard to the aquifer recently. There are now regular meetings joint meetings of the county commissioners and the city council to discuss various other issues. I think we're already doing a good job, and I think, you know, I don't have much to add except I think that we should continue this. I think that the relationship is finally working.
Yeah, I mean, I honestly think I would kind of agree with Brett on this one. I really, really value the relationships that the city of Laramie has built with other agencies, with county commission, anywhere from nonprofit organizations to local businesses. And so I'm actually really proud of what the council has been able to accomplish. I think for me, one great example, which Brett kind of mentioned, is the Aquifer Protection Plan. I think that is a good example of how those two entities work well together. And, you know, if I were to be elected, I think one of my strengths is to be able to talk to a lot of different people and build relationships through difference. And so if there was ever to be, you know, a sticking point or something that came up, I think I would be able to do a really good job of bridging the gaps and building those relationships.
Yeah, so this is year 12 on city council, and for the first 8, it was horrible. So I just want to say how excited and happy and pleased I am that we have a really good working relationship over the last 4 years, and I hope and pray, frankly, that it continues. We have the Casper Aquifer Protection Plan, we have the Laramie Growth Plan, we have an agreement with them related to the county related to emergency services. The list is long, and there's still more to do. And so I'm excited about that as well, because when there is cooperation and you get budgetary efficiencies, all sorts of really good things can happen. And that's the good news.
Yeah, I'd have to say I'm fairly satisfied at this point with the relationships between the city and the county. Obviously, county residents benefit from sound decisions made by city officials. City residents benefit from sound decisions made by county officials. I think for me it would be something that would be worthwhile, obviously continuing that relationship. But I think there's a third governing board that needs involvement as well, and that would be the University of Wyoming trustees, because obviously decisions that they make are something that impacts residents of both the city and the county, and when you have decisions being made by that group without, I think, consultation about and an understanding of what the larger city sees as important, I think that's a misstep as well. So that would be a place for me that would be critically important as well. So great relationships with the county already. I'd love to continue that and would love to expand that to include the folks at the university as well.
Yeah, I think we're on the same page. I think I would echo a lot of what's been previously said. I think from what I know about the city and county relationship in the past few years has been very beneficial and effective. And thinking about the Joint Powers Board for the airport and providing transparency and accountability and representatives from the city and the county to really work hand in hand. You'd say the same thing about policing and the aquifer. And so I think if we walk into city council, there's a good platform to continue building on. And ultimately, members elected to the county commission and city council are here to represent the people and work together. So, there is a boundary. There isn't a city and county boundary that the aquifer, looks to. It's just an aquifer that we need to protect and work together to ensure that it is protected in the future. And so, while there's different sets of priorities for each one of those, I think the end goal should be to communicate effectively and figure out how to protect our constituents.
Thank you. For our next question, we'll start with Melanie. So I had this one written down, partnership. How would you characterize the current relationship between the university and the city government? What should that relationship be? And a more pointed framing came from the audience. Is the city bullied by the university? E.g. Lewis and 15th Street, et cetera.
I got to be careful because the university is my employer. But no, I think the university and community partnership is pretty interesting. I know that there's a couple of committees that work together both between the university and the city, including our town gown committee. And then I've also been involved in a lot of service projects and leadership projects with our Service Leadership Community Engagement Office, such as the big event that works with the city of Laramie to provide some service work across the community. And so I think those are some examples of things that work really well. I would also say that I would want to improve the relationship for sure. I think that there are a couple of things that come to mind with our 15th Street closure. I'm not sure a whole lot of community input was given with some of that decisions. With some of those decisions by the university. And so really what I would want to do is be a conduit for communication. I think communication is everything. And when our relationship works, it works really, really well. But yeah, there are a few things I'd want to improve for sure. Thanks.
Yeah, so at full disclosure, I also work for the University of Wyoming, but and there are times where that relationship is not great, and there certainly is much room for improvement. But I guess if I had one comment to make for folks to actually understand, kind of the university's place and the city's place, I said, do a little research on the most recent Wyoming Supreme Court decision, and you will absolutely understand the university's place and the city's place.
Yeah, I want to start by just saying I think UW provides an amazing benefit to our community through an influx of young, eager learners, great research and development that comes out of the university, opportunities for economic development, and so forth. But I think to directly answer the pointed part of the question is, I don't think the city's bullied necessarily by UW, but I think that there's a critical understanding that's important when it comes to the university, and it's which part of the university are we looking to strengthen the relationship with, right? Does that mean we're strengthening the relationship with the administration? Does it mean we're strengthening the relationship with the trustees, or even further, strengthening the relationship with the legislature, who really ultimately controls the purse strings and can have sort of overreaching decisions on what the university does and doesn't do? And so I think, to me, it's just, I think, paramount to start taking steps towards having a better relationship and dialogue when decisions are going to impact the citizens of Laramie, the residents of Laramie, and not just the students. And I don't think that there's necessarily been a poor job of that being done, but for me, it's something that should continue to be strengthened and nurtured with the city council.
Yeah, I think I would echo a lot of what Melanie said about communication and working together. I think the city council has proven successful in other relationships, and so I think with two big players, that's a possibility. And there's no secret that the university is a huge industry and a huge driving force in Laramie. With a lot of folks that graduate from the University of Wyoming that stay in Laramie and then become voters and become homeowners and have raised their families here, start their own small business. So the university is a player, and they do a lot for our community. I think there might be a history of strained relationships on specific issues, zoning and development, and I think that comes from how we can solve that is strong future plans and strategic plans. The university puts out a strategic plan. The city has a strategic plan, looking at where growth and development will occur and finding commonality and ways to work together. And I think Pilot Hill is one of the best examples of that, where the university owns, part of Pilot Hill, and that's managed really well with county and other entities, and that's created a huge opportunity for recreation and for infrastructure in Laramie and for this community. And so it's proven that it can work. So maybe identifying who's willing to, speak on behalf of the university and the city and find ways that we can work together, because the city is the city and the university is a huge force here.
Yes, well, there's no question that UW is a great asset to our community, and it does wonderful things for us, and it's one of the reasons why I live here. And council has a duty to work with the university in a positive way, but it also has a duty to push back against the university when its institutional self-interest goes beyond what's appropriate, and it impacts the city in various ways. The recent water issues are a good example of that. And of course, one of the problems we also have is the big hole in our tax base that's left by the university, which is not subject to property taxes. Even its commercial ventures, such as its apartments, have been ruled to be exempt from taxes, and this has caused us problems in terms of maintaining city services and city infrastructure. We also need to be careful of university competing with and driving out local businesses. And this is again something that council needs to be wary of and negotiate tactfully with the university and see if we can see if we can prevent it from being town versus gown. Most of all, though, what we need to fight is the insularity of the university. We need to make sure that people who are at the university are not off in their own little world, that they're part of the community. Make sure that Laramie is an asset to them and they are an asset to Laramie. That's, I think, the most important thing we can do, and I think it's also a solution to a lot of the other problems, because if people feel like they have a vested interest in the city and not just in the campus, they're going to be more open to solutions that work for everyone.
Great. Jayne, you're going to be the first one to answer this one. It's about the relationship between the city and nonprofit groups. And I'll frame the question as, what do you think is the proper relationship between the city and nonprofit groups? But I will then read the question from the audience, which is, Laramie gave away $226,000 to nonprofit groups this year with no internal controls in place to assure these funds are properly spent. Would you stop the practice and/or recommend to the voters not to continue the 5th Cent initiative?
Okay, so the city is really dependent on the 5th Cent, so I would absolutely not suggest that as a means to an end, so to speak. And what else was there?
Basically, the relationship between Laramie and nonprofit groups, and would you stop the practice of the city funding nonprofit groups?
And no to that. Each council member, so the nonprofit groups in town come to council and present their plan or what they do. And each council member gets to decide who they're going to allocate funds to, and then that number gets averaged, right? So in my particular case and my particular philosophy is, because there is a separation between church and state, I usually move away from funding any sort of religious activity. If it's having to do with, say, for example, the downtown clinic, for example, when we're talking about health for our community or food for our community, with disadvantaged populations, then I say absolutely yes. And frankly, there's never enough money to go around for these particular nonprofits. So I guess that's my personal opinion, for whatever it's worth, right?
Perfect timing.
Yeah, I think, to me, it's pretty apparent that the number of nonprofits that exist in Laramie exist because they're filling a gap that isn't otherwise covered by either governmental services or the for-profit sector. And I think that they have a critical role to the community. As far as funding goes, I'm fully in support of government supplementing nonprofit work. I think the issue comes for a lot of folks because they may disagree with the mission or the purpose of a particular nonprofit. I mentioned I was on the City of Laramie's Parks, Tree, and Recreation Advisory Board, and collectively with the Albany County School District and the Albany County Recreation Board gave away just under $500,000 to youth and adult recreation opportunities. I support that, and I don't think that there was ever any sort of consternation about that kind of funding. And so, I stand by exactly what I said and think that the funding for other nonprofits is critical to make sure that our city is a place that's beneficial and welcoming and provides services for the community.
Yeah, I echo a lot of what was just said. I've worked in nonprofits my whole adult life in different organizations, and they really do, like Brett said, fill a need. If there wasn't a need for those nonprofits, that would be the government or municipalities or private industry would cover that. That's just not the reality that we live in. Maybe one day it is. So nonprofits are really created to bolster communities that are disadvantaged, that really need funding or need assistance that otherwise aren't available to them. So as a city, I think that's a great use of funding. If there are issues with where that funding is going, I'm happy to look into understanding how decisions are made or provide transparency on which nonprofits get funding and have an application. And I'm sure that stuff exists, but if that's an issue that the community is identifying, then let's talk about it. Let's understand where we're putting our funding. When I was running an AmeriCorps program, one of the statistics that they would say in Washington, D.C. is that AmeriCorps is the only government organization that had a return on its dollar. Every other government-funded entity lost money and didn't bring money back the same way that nonprofits do, the same way that AmeriCorps did, which is just a large nonprofit. That there's plenty of AmeriCorps programs happening here in Laramie that support our community in different ways. And so I think overall nonprofits are a great use of resources, and they really help out the communities that need them. And so if we need to understand a little more about transparency, then let's do it.
Yes. Well, nonprofits are a vital asset to any community, and we really have two classes of nonprofits that we're talking about here. They're kind of getting aggregated together here. The first kind is charities, and many of the charitable organizations like Interfaith Good Samaritan, for example, in town, are just wonderful and tremendous assets to the community. Some of the others, there's one that I actually took part in founding, which is the Laramie Film Society, which doesn't ask for money for the city. But if you look around you, the surround sound speakers on the wall here were contributed to the library by the Laramie Film Society, so that now this room can be a real theater, and we can bring that to Laramie. So those are some of the nonprofits I think we should definitely support. On the other hand, there are other nonprofits which are sort of hired as work for hire organizations. And that is a little more questionable. The interests of some of those groups don't always coincide with the interests of the public, and once they get the contract, they're not directly accountable to the public. They don't always do what the public wants, and that is a real concern. So I think we need to be very selective. We need to make sure that any nonprofit that we do fund is the right kind of nonprofit and that it's acting in the public interest and not just out of its own self-interest.
Yeah, what some of my other colleagues here have said, nonprofits really do a lot of really critical work here in our community. I think, nonprofits affect my daily life. So I just got my dog back in November from Laramie Animal Welfare Society. Right now, I live right next to Kiwanis Park, and I'm stewarding a garden plot from Feeding Laramie Valley. And I can name like 12 different examples of that. And I think what our community does really well is support nonprofits. I think we saw that yesterday during YO Gives Day, and all of the nonprofits here in Laramie that were supported. I've worked for nonprofits in past lives before the university, and yeah. So I think some of those partnerships with the city of Laramie and nonprofits only need to be strengthened. And yeah, I'd be a proud proponent of nonprofit work. Even in my work life, my professional life, we work really closely with Albany County Safe Project, which provides just critical resources to our community. My partner is on the board there, and just being able to see the work that they've been able to do for the university and for the city has been awesome. And so, again, a very big proponent of supporting our nonprofits here.
Great. Brett, you'll be the first respondent to this fiscal question. Are you concerned about the loss of property tax revenue due to bills already passed or being considered by the legislature? And where would you look to cut budgets? I guess there's two questions in there.
Yeah.
Okay. I'll try to tackle
sorry,
that.
it's the middle Brett goes
the middle
first.
Brett.
Sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, here you go.
That'll happen. Simply put, yes, I absolutely am, and I think every community around Wyoming should be. When the largest landowner in our community doesn't pay property taxes already, we're already doing less with less. And I meant to say it that way because I think we have had to cut critical services, and I think it's put us in a place where we've had to decide as a community, where do we want to cut the most, or without cutting things completely, and then instead of running snow plows as often, now we're just going to salt the roads and hope that solves the problems, kind of things. But there are a number of bills presented to the legislature, and I'm completely understanding of folks who are in a situation where they need some sort of targeted relief from higher property taxes. And targeted relief would be a lot different than the broad swath that's being discussed, as well as the option to potentially supplement property tax with higher sales tax, which I'd be completely opposed to, because just a multitude of reasons, but it really does put the renters at a massive disadvantage for having to pay more sales tax and not getting the benefit of less property tax. But for me, it would be about finding where the most reasonable opportunities to maintain our massively important operations without cutting things completely. And like I said, I think we're already doing a lot of that. And so, unfortunately, if we found ourselves in that place, it'd just be really, really unfortunate.
Yeah, I would not be in favor of broad cuts to property taxes. I think that's a huge income for the critical infrastructure of Laramie. Schools, fire, roads, so many things that we rely on for our community to be what it is come from property taxes. I think, I would be in favor of specific and targeted property tax accommodations for, fixed income earners. I think, property taxes going up is hard if you're a lower income or you're fixed income. And so I think we need to find solutions for those people and make sure that we can accommodate everyone. But in terms of just having property taxes cut, I think I saw estimates of around $300,000 of lost revenue that would happen for the city of Laramie. And that goes to how our city operates. So I would not be in favor of that, no.
So as most of you know, the state legislature recently went on a property tax cutting binge during the last session, and they managed to get through several exemptions for very specific groups. And I opposed this and spoke against this to the legislature because I thought that it was very unfair that they only targeted those very specific groups and left out a lot of groups. As was already mentioned, one of those groups was renters. They completely exempted, or they completely excluded from the cuts any rental property and such, and as such, they were actually heaping the taxes onto renters, which is not a good thing. In any case, it is inevitable during the next session that there are going to be more property tax cuts. And as that happens, our city government is going to need to stick to its knitting. It's going to focus on the core functions of a municipal government and the essential public services that it has to provide. It can't provide extra or frivolous or incur extra or frivolous expenses, and it can't take on responsibilities that can be handled by the state or county government, or otherwise bite off more than it can chew. It needs to make purchases wisely, rather than attempting to exploit loopholes. One of the loopholes that it has been doing has been the city has been entering into no-bid contracts by claiming that things that it buys are contracts for professional services. And this is something that we definitely need to crack down on by ordinance. And we need to concentrate on the preservation of the public health, safety, and welfare. I also agree with Brett Kay that we absolutely do not want to increase the sales tax. That would be very aggressive. That would be very bad for the most unfortunate in our community.
Like some of the others have kind of mentioned, I'd be willing to look into some targeted relief, but really, I think our property taxes are what fund critical services here in Laramie. I've never heard anyone say, hey, yeah, let's only do trash day once a month. I've never heard, hey, let's XYZ services. I'll think of something here soon. But yeah, I think our critical city services operate so well because of our tax money and our tax dollars that fund them. And so, yeah, I would not be in favor of cutting those taxes for any reason.
So I agree with most of the folks here tonight in terms of the targeted tax relief that the state has provided. And they passed four bills in this last session, and 2 of the 4 bills are on a application process. So veterans, if they want to take that tax relief, they apply to take that tax relief. If you're over 65 and you've paid property tax for 25 years, you can then apply for a little bit of tax relief. And I believe it's only for a 3-year period. But I think, and I think that's great to offer folks in particular need or targeted populations this sort of relief. I absolutely applaud the state for doing that. What is not so good is the blanket tax, property tax relief overall. The city budget, $2.7 million is collected in property tax. That's roughly 76% of the general fund. And so that becomes real money, right? The roughly $40,000 is basically going to be the hit to the city that the assessor's office is predicting for if you're over 65 and have paid taxes for 25 years. So we're comparing 40,000-ish to 2.7 million, and that's a big deal.
Okay, I've got a question that Jim will start with. A couple of questions here on a west side issue. Would you be willing, do you think the west side would benefit from a preservation zone in an attempt to maintain its historic character? Similarly, would you give consideration to adopting a new zone for Laramie to recognize the unique small lot size of the homes on the west side, which some Ward 2 residents are proposing?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. I think there's historical significance all over, and so if that's something that Ward 2 residents in West Laramie want, I think that is more than appropriate for the city to listen to them and decide what makes sense and what's equitable. I'm not well versed in specifically what those folks are asking, so it's something I would look into to make sure I understand the issue fully. But just from my gut, I think if that's what constituents are concerned about, it should be heard by the city and should be represented by us, and then we can make an informed decision, especially if that protection, preservation, is beneficial to the economy or can affect other parts of our community. I think we should absolutely do it, but I'd be willing to listen to it for sure.
Those who are interested in this topic should go to cityoflaramie.org/agenda center and look at the materials from this Tuesday's work session where they talked about this very thing. And actually, the materials there are very good. They gave some very good information about what the citizens of West Laramie want and what they're concerned about. One of the things that they're concerned about is scrape-offs, where someone builds something huge that doesn't fit at all with the character of the community. And this is something we should definitely listen to when we're dealing with planning and zoning. Now, Laramie's Planning and Zoning Department, unfortunately, seems to, in general, be in favor of this sort of densification, and we need to push back against that. And again, we can do that by listening to the public and by making sure the council represents the people and not fads or trends, again, because that will cause the wrong thing to happen. If the people want a preservation district, let's do it. If we want to have a special zone, let's do it. Either an overlay zone or a separate zone. Let's do what makes sense. Let's preserve that because it's a wonderful neighborhood.
Yeah, I mean, like some of the other folks here, I think I'd have to do a little bit more research. Something that I wouldn't want to have happen is any unintended consequences to, this historical preservation work. I would never want anyone's rents to be raised because they're in a special area of Laramie, et cetera. But I will say that, right, like my family is historically from the West Side, and a lot of incredible things have happened over on the West Side. So the creation of our town's first Latino baseball team, for example, that my Uncle Rome was on. And I look back at those pictures, and the West Side really has a soft place in my heart. And any effort to kind of preserve some of that, some of the historical nature of those neighborhoods, I think I would be in support of. I would just want to look into this a little bit more.
So who doesn't love the West Side? I mean, I absolutely love the West Side, and the city and the community has been working together for a very long time, and we've had numerous discussions, and I hope that we come to an accord. I think that would be the best case scenario, and I'm looking forward to more discussions. And they've had public meetings at the Laramie Community Center or the Lincoln Community Center, and just very interesting and different forms of communication in terms of. And not to get into too much detail, but there is a difference between, and I think this is perhaps what the question is getting at, there is a difference between a historic overlay as well as just a community-wide or West Side-wide decision making. So I think that's what they're trying to get at, but I'm not exactly sure by how that question was worded. And they're two very different things, and we need to be very aware of what those requirements are based on the decisions that were made by the population over in the West Side.
Yeah, I too would have to do, I think, more research on this, and I unfortunately missed Tuesday's work session. But for me, I think I go back to we need to know what the residents of West Laramie are actually truly interested in doing. I would, one part that I take pause in considering of something of sort of this magnitude of historic preservation designation is really setting the current council setting the tone for Laramie in 100 years, and I think that there's a really awesome thing for preserving history of Laramie and keeping Laramie as it is. But if future Laramie has sort of different ideas and different plans, I think it's important for us to consider what that long-term implication would be, and do the best that we can for the residents now, whatever kind of designation would support the interest that they have, without causing some sort of delay or red tape, as they would say, far into the future. So.
Okay, Brett, at the end of the table, you get to be the first one this time, and it's a constitutional question. According to the Wyoming Constitution, we are a home rule state when it comes to municipal government. In reality, the legislature often preempts local control. As a city council member, to what extent would you be willing to fight for home rule?
I would be willing to support home rule when it makes sense. Obviously, there are some issues that are hyper-local, and on those we should go ahead and, if necessary, go past charter ordinances, which are a special mechanism by which the city can override even state statutes. But on the other hand, there are some things that really should be consistent statewide. We wouldn't, for example, want to pass an ordinance that tells everybody that when they come into Laramie, they suddenly have to switch over and drive on the left-hand side of the road, for example. And so there does need to be a limit, and some rationality to local control. Now this relates back to the rental housing issue. Where right now the state government is looking at delegating the functions related to rental housing and its regulation to counties rather than to cities. Now, my personal opinion is that this is a good thing because of what I mentioned before about courts. Right now, a half a block away from City Hall, we have the county courthouse, which can do things with rentals that the city is not empowered to do, and help tenants, and enforce the state law, which says that rentals have to be safe and sanitary and habitable already. So we could actually delegate. That might be a good thing to delegate. But again, there are some things that we should consider locally. I guess a good example would be we have our police accountability board. I think that's a very good thing to keep local.
Yeah, I mean, just to kind of reiterate, a good example of local control is the conversation right now with Laramie's rental ordinance and our state legislature. I think generally speaking, community members in any town or municipality should have the freedom to be able to, be of their own self-determination. I think where it becomes dishonest, though, especially with our state legislature, is when, for a governing body that values this local control, it's overriding a town's ordinance when it comes to housing is a little bit dishonest. And so I'm all for home rule when it makes sense, but I also feel like, we just have to be honest about how we're using it.
So you want to repeat?
To what extent would you be willing to fight for home rule in a home rule state?
Yes. So, yes, of course. And of course, it depends on the issue. But I think one thing that folks need to understand is in most of the other states in the union, the funding model and the revenue that municipalities or counties can generate is different than how it is in Wyoming. And I realize this is a little off topic, but because I'm bringing it up, is it creates this dependency situation on the state, because the state of Wyoming supplies funds to the municipalities, so it puts us in a pretty tough position to get too excited because they can pull the purse strings, right? And then they don't give us the tools to generate our own revenue. So it's kind of a tough spot to be in. So that's why we really need to pick and choose, when we make some of those decisions, if that helps. That's kind of, yeah.
Yeah, Jayne took my civics lesson. That's exactly what I was going to say. But no, I think it's it's important for the state to make decisions that impact residents of the state of Wyoming as a whole, but not important for the state to make decisions that impact residents of particular cities or counties in this type of way. And I think to leave these types of decisions up to the county officials also doesn't make a lot of sense. Clearly, making regulations, ordinances, whatever they might be, from Albany County's commissioner's level, when it comes to Centennial, is a little bit different as an unincorporated town than it would be when it comes to the city of Laramie. And so, a little bit to me, especially when it's on this rental ordinance component, it's a little bit like when one parent says no, we ask the other. And I think that instead we should work to find the most sensible solutions within the walls of our community that work best for the folks who live here.
Wow, I think we all agree. To echo a lot of what's said, I think there's different levels of government for different reasons, and different protections are allotted from those. And so when we can solve issues at a city level, I think that's what city government is for. We've talked about the rental ordinance, we've talked about other issues, and that's, the city's ability to make ordinances that can impact our lives is going to be real. We're in a room with you right now versus state legislators that might not be, here. And so I think each government serves a purpose. I think when we can make effective use of our time and our money and our communication pathways, we should. And I think from my perspective, a lot of that happens at a city level to govern a city. The concerns of the county and the state could be vastly different than what the individuals in the Laramie community are thinking about. And so when we look to see what government can do what for our communities, I think it's important to look at the city level first and then move out from that.
We're coming to the end of our time. As with classes that I teach, I try to squeeze in every last second of our time together. So here's an environmental question, but it's actually two that I'm going to ask you both as one question, and you can deal with one of them or both of them, whatever, in your last 90 seconds. Should the city invest in solar collectors on city buildings? And how committed are you to the carbon neutral resolution that was passed by the City Council? Melanie, you go first.
Yeah, again, alongside the rental ordinance that was passed with the carbon neutrality, decision, again, it made me proud to be from Laramie. And so, again, I want to thank Jayne and her colleagues for doing that hard work. And so I would be a fierce advocate for that. If there's any way to strengthen it, I'd be in support of that as well. We live in an ever-changing world, and we have to keep up. And so when it comes to solar energy, I can't remember the exact thing, but solar energy and
solar collectors on city buildings.
Okay, yes. I'd love to explore that. I think one thing that I really appreciate is, when folks get creative about solutions and workable solutions that work for the community. And so I'd love to be a partner in exploring more of that for sure.
So yes and yes, we have solar out at our Municipal Operations Center right now. We're looking at solar out on the Monolith Ranch and potentially in the future on the Bath Ranch. There's also opportunity for wind. County has made some headway in terms of the wind project. The city is happily accepting some of the revenue from that decision, which was great. What else is part of that question? Yeah, so the more we can do to generate revenue, the better it's going to be,
Yeah, also yes and yes. I think Wyoming's employing the all the above energy policy, and I think Laramie should certainly play in that sandbox as well. And as far as solar goes, I know that there's some net metering complexities that don't allow the city buildings to have the vastness of solar collection that they could. But I have no qualms or no issue with taking that to the limit. To me, it's a long-term investment. I think there could be an argument made. Well, if the cost to put solar panels on this building is going to cost more than the energy that's paid for in any given year, then maybe it's not worth it. But over 10 to 15 to 20 years, it's absolutely worth it. So, I think in conjunction with addressing the critical infrastructure issues that exist in Laramie, this is also something that is just sort of a no-brainer if the funding opportunities or grant opportunities or whatever it might be exist.
So my background is in environmental natural resources. I got a Bachelor of Science from the University of Wyoming a few years back. And so I learned a little bit about solar, and in my work in conservation nonprofits, some understanding. And really for me, I think diversity in almost any situation is helpful. So if we can diversify how we're collecting energy and how we're generating some sort of income, I think why not? What's the cost benefit? And so without knowing, the solar input versus the output and what that actually gives our city, I don't have 100% yes, but it sounds like a great thing. But I'd like to look at the numbers and what we're providing for our community members. And on that note, it's what the community wants. Again, that's what city council is here to do. And so if that's what constituents think is good, I think we balance that with what the needs of the future of Laramie are from our perspectives. And I think that's what a good city councilor can do, is take the input that you get from the folks that are in this community and then use your background and the reason that you got elected to make an informed decision. And so everything that I know, I think solar is great. That technology is ever increasing. It would be a great way to diversify our energy needs, and I think I would be in support.
Yes. Well, as an electrical engineer, I have actually designed solar power systems, and so I definitely have some input into this. I think it's almost inevitable that the city is going to save money, and this is a good thing, again, with the aforementioned budget crunch. So I say, yes, definitely let's do solar. But let's recognize that because of the nature of solar, if we don't have net metering, we're not going to benefit nearly as much from that. And this is something where we need to send resolutions to the State House to make sure that they don't cut that, because the Corporations Committee has several times considered proposals to get rid of that. Now, in terms of carbon impact, well, our carbon footprint as a city isn't mainly the city operations itself. So yes, there's some, and it's great to reduce it, but if you think about who are the biggest generators of carbon, Mountain Cement with their huge kiln, the UW power plant, and then lots and lots of individual furnaces and water heaters in cars. So if we really want, if it is city policy to reduce our carbon footprint, we should be doing what we can to incentivize those other sources to reduce their carbon footprint, because that's going to matter a lot more than the city's own efforts to minimize its own.
Thank you, candidates. This is not easy, getting peppered with questions for 90 minutes. Thank you for sharing your ideas. Thank you, citizens and voters, for coming out and submitting so many great questions. I'm terribly sorry that I didn't get to all of them, but we'll just see if these politicians want to stay here until every last question has been answered. Sorry, didn't warn you I was going to say that. And of course, thank you to the League of Women Voters for upholding the power of communities to come together and hash out for ourselves how we're going to move forward through our elections. Thank you all.
So thank you.
We did it. That was fun.
Peter promises to pick up his array here later. And if anybody wonders, I transcribe these things and we save them for the next time around. I have a number of housekeeping things. One, I'm supposed to tell you that your ballots are now online. You can go and look at them. Early voting begins on July 23rd. So if you want to and are able to, vote absentee, ask now. I asked for my ballot 2 months ago. Again, they haven't said anything, but I assume it's coming soon. The primary is August 20th. Tell everybody you know that there are recordings. They're on the League's website. They're on the Laramie League's website. They're on the library's website. They're on City TV. City TV now has a Facebook channel. So it's channel 191 and their Facebook. I didn't see anybody recording or taking photographs, but that's a no-no. So if you did, don't use them. Just as a reminder, I don't know if you realize how frequently voters don't vote on the down ballot. And municipal elections is part of that down ballot. So tell your friends that, it makes all the difference in the world, that they go all the way to the bottom. And one way to know what you're doing as you're going down the down ballot, is to read the voter guide. And the voter guide, the Laramie City voter guide, is coming out on the 27th. It'll be an insert in the paper, like always. And we have to thank the local newspaper because they pay for this. They have paid for this for about 50 years. What else? Just as a reminder, this race, the city council race, is nonpartisan. So that means no matter what party you're in, this race will be on your ballot. All right? So look forward to that. And it seems like we have some miscommunication. I think on vote 411, it says pick 6, but in fact, we only get to pick 4. Am I right, candidates? There are 2 positions available. What?
Yes.
So
Yes,
you get to-
4 people will move on to the general.
But you only get to pick 2 when you vote.
Well, that's true. You only get to pick 2 when you vote, but 4 people will move on.
Yes.
Let's see, what else here? When you're leaving, if you could do us a favor and sign in at the sign-up sheet, and then we can better communicate with the people who are interested. Just a little shout out. We're always looking for new membership. Members of the League of Women Voters, whether it's in Laramie or any of the other leagues. We have local leagues in, in Jackson, in Gillette, in Casper, in Cheyenne, and here.
So this is the cities.
What? Oh, in Fremont County. How could I forget Fremont County?
Are you kidding me?
And if you're a full-time student, you don't pay dues. All you have to do is sign up and participate. And you can participate by being a volunteer in an event like this. Anyway, think about it. There is one more candidate. She's an incumbent for this race. Her name is Andi Summerville. We didn't hear why she was unable to attend, but her responses will be in the voter guide. She did respond to the questions. I think that's it. Besides, let's give our candidates another big hand. And next Thursday, same time, same place, we'll see the rest of the city council candidates. So good night. Stay and mingle, please.
And thanks to the League of Women Voters and the library and Peter.
Peter.
Yeah.
Thanks, Peter.